88 years ago, the creation and subsequent notoriety of this classic all-American dessert all started in the early 1930s when Kenneth Wakefield and his wife Ruth Wakefield purchased an old tourist lodge in Whitman, Massachusetts, and opened up the Toll House Inn. The Wakefields were able to generate a decent profit from this inn even through the tough economic times of the Great Depression, and some credit their success solely to Ruth Wakefield's cooking. Ruth Wakefield had a well-known reputation for her delicious home-cooked meals and desserts, which grew into the success of the Toll House Inn's reputation. People from all around would come to stay at the Toll House Inn just to taste Miss Wakefield's home-away-from-home style cooking. This extended to even famous people, including then-Senator John F. Kennedy. After noticing the popularity of her cooking, Ruth Wakefield authored a cookbook called Ruth Wakefield's Toll House Tried and True Recipes that featured some of her most famous dishes, like her chocolate butter drop dough. On the night this dessert was invented, they originally began as her famous chocolate butter drop dough cookies when Wakefield realized she had run out of baker's chocolate. Out of desperation and quick thinking, she chopped up a bar of Nestle's semi-sweet chocolate into small chunks. Wakefield expected the chopped up chocolate bar to melt and disperse throughout the cookie once it was baked. To her surprise, the chocolate chunks retained their shape as the cookie was baked and created a soft and gooey chocolate chip cookie. The name was coined because of the chips of chocolate bar in the cookie. Due to its enormous success that night, Wakefield had to repeat the recipe as popularity and word spread over this new dessert. The recipe was published across several New England newspapers and even aired on the Betty Crocker Cooking School of the Air radio program. During World War II, people began sending these cookies to their soldiers, and soon enough, more and more soldiers were writing letters to home asking for Ruth's chocolate chip cookies. This helped the spread of this recipe and caused a spike in the sale of Nestle's semi-sweet chocolate bars. Nestle began marketing towards families by encouraging them to send Miss Ruth's cookies to their loved ones at war, and even included mailing directions on the ads. Soon after, the Wakefields and Nestle scored a deal. In this deal, Nestle would print Miss Wakefield's Toll House Cookies recipe on the back of every semi-sweet chocolate bar. Rumor has it that the recipe was traded for only $1. Other sources claim that she was given a lifetime supply of Nestle's semi-sweet chocolate bars. From this deal, Nestle had the exclusive rights to this trademark until 1983, when a few ambiguities were discovered in the original agreement. These ambiguities made the name Toll House Cookies become a descriptor, but it still continues to be a subsidiary of Nestle. Due to the enormous amount of sales made from these cookies, Nestle decided to create scored chocolate bars and eventually pre-cut chocolate morsels ready for baking in 1939. These chocolate morsels are what came from a national craze over this new dessert, and this is how the chocolate chip cookie was accidentally invented. Next, I will show you how to bake the perfect chocolate chip cookie. I will share with you 6 tips that I have learned through 5 years of trial and error of baking cookies and a passed-on family secret. My first tip begins a few hours prior to baking. When working with refrigerated items, you should always take out ingredients like butter and eggs 1 to 2 hours prior to baking to allow them to settle to room temperature. This makes the batter more consistent and fluffier, and in the end, easier to blend. Although this is a tip that you should follow, it is important that you don't remove these ingredients out too early to avoid potential bacterial growth. My second tip is to blend different types of flour. I like to use baking flour and all-purpose flour when baking chocolate chip cookies. The all-purpose flour acts as the batter's base, and the baking flour adds softness to the batter. When combined, they create a softer baked cookie that still holds its structure. The easiest way to combine the different flours and your dry ingredients is to sift them in a large bowl. Although this does take a little bit of time, it will create a well-blended dry ingredient mixture. It is important to note that you shouldn't always deviate from the recipe like I have, but this is a tip that my grandmother passed on to me and is proven to not interfere with the cookie's chemical makeup. My third tip is to use a combination of both granulated sugar and confectioner's sugar. The granulated sugar gives the cookie structure, and the confectioner's makes the batter sweeter. This is a tip that I have picked up through the many years of baking chocolate chip cookies. My fourth tip is to hand mix your wet ingredients before you use an electronic mixer. This helps to avoid issues like backsplash and overmixing. Hand mixing will also create bigger air bubbles and in turn make the batter fluffier. My fifth tip is to use a variety of chocolate chips in your cookies. In this recipe, I like to use 3/4 a bag of milk chocolate chips, half a bag of special dark chocolate, and a cut-up bar of Nestle's semi-sweet chocolate. I like to hand cut the semi-sweet chocolate bar because it adds a sense of texture through the chunks compared to having regular chocolate chip morsels. I like to use a variety of chocolate because it adds a richer flavor that surprisingly isn't too sweet. It is also always fun to experiment with chocolate chip combinations, and I sometimes even like to add crushed Oreo cookies to the batter to make a different type of cookie. My sixth and final step is to always grease your pans unless they are nonstick pans. You want to avoid greasing nonstick pans because it interferes with the chemical coating on the pan and can mess that up. You should also avoid using oils like extra virgin olive oil because it can overpower the other ingredients because it carries such a strong taste. I like to use regular oil like any vegetable oil, and I also like to spread the oil around the pan with a paper towel to absorb any excess oils. Now that you know how to bake the perfect chocolate chip cookie, here are the nutritional facts. A serving is an average of 19 grams or 1 cookie and is around 90 calories. This dessert has a total of 5 grams of fat with 2 grams of saturated fat. The cookie also has 75 milligrams of sodium, 11 grams of carbs, 6 grams of sugar, and 1 gram of protein.